welcome to everybody. Thank you so much for taking some time out on a Wednesday evening to join us. Really happy to have you here. We are recording this. The webinar will be made available later. I see folks are already finding the chat, so that is fantastic. Feel free to go to town on the chat. One thing I will let you know is if you do have questions that come up, we are going to have a Q&A portion at the end. And so you can hop into the Q&A section. And my understanding is there's some functionality you can upvote questions so that when we get to the end of our deck, we will have the ability to go through and pick out some of the questions that are more popular among the group here. So with that, I think we will go ahead and get started. So we'll kick off with some introductions, and forgive me if it takes me a second because I'm not awesome at technology. Cool.
You are forgiven. You're forgiven.
So we'll do some quick introductions of panelists. I am Kate. I am an MBA 2, originally from Newton, Mass, so Boston area, which is where I will be returning after Ross. I did my undergrad at Connecticut College, also got first master's in sport management back in the day, so here for round 2. Before coming to Ross, I was a high school athletic director, also a teacher and a coach. So if you're somebody looking at a pivot, I can certainly speak to that. So my MAP project this past year, I worked with United Healthcare, had a fantastic experience. We looked specifically at serving the criminal justice involved population. And then my internship, I was at Bain's Boston office this summer, also in a healthcare project, specifically on telehealth. As far as getting through the final season, my wife is a huge Christmas season fan, so we wake up to a new Christmas song every morning, but one of my favorites is a pentatonic song called That's Christmas to Me. Absolutely love that song. So if you haven't heard it, I would say worth a check out. So I'll hop over to Krista.
Hi, everybody. I'm Krista, first year MBA here at Ross. So my entire MBA experience has been virtual by far, as far as classes go, but we found ways to connect. We can talk about that later. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York, and I spent the past 5 years in New York City working at digital marketing and advertising agencies, focusing on FinServe clients, telecom clients, and I will be making a career pivot into management consulting. We'll be working in Chicago, likely sitting here in Ann Arbor, but like hopefully we can spend some time in Chicago. And the song getting me through finals, I've wisened up this time around. There's a lot of Kim Petras going on in our apartment. I think Kim Petras for me is the only artist who can rival Gaga for Pride playlist queen. So happy to discuss.
Hey, thank you, Krista and Kate. So yeah, I am a second year MBA, and I hail from Minnesota, a little western suburb called Excelsior, and I went to the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities. I was at Deloitte Consulting before I started my MBA, working in the healthcare space, and we'll be returning to Deloitte Consulting, potentially in the healthcare space, we will see. And in Chicago as well. So Krista Sue, looking to enjoy a cocktail with you on a routine basis. MAP, I was with Neuromi Medical. So we did a cool biomedical startup out there, doing some market entry work in the United States. So it was really exciting. Everything over the summer was, I'm sure everyone had a bit of a unique experience. I ended up taking what I learned from MAP and basically wrote 4 separate independent consulting contracts. So made my summer work, and it was wild and different and interesting, and gave me a lot of hope that maybe I could do that sometime in the future. And I have taken the COVID time to really deep dive into electronic dance music, progressive house, progressive trance, which includes Lane 8, and found that listening to full 2-hour sets or even 1-hour sets has been just an amazing way to just enjoy music. And so Lane 8's recent Sunrise set has been my jam.
Awesome.
And thank you, Brian.
Thanks, guys.
Got some Lane 8 lovers.
So our real purpose for this webinar is to just introduce you guys to Ross and to the Out for Business community at Ross. I think you'll hear, hopefully over the course of this webinar from Dustin and Kristen, I can certainly say for myself in my experience that Ross is a very supportive and very engaged community. And so we'll touch a bit on Ross and then more specifically what it is that OFB does and our role as a group within the business school. So I'll pass off to Krista.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think folks may or most likely know already, OFB is Ross's LGBT diversity / affinity group for the folks in the queer, MBA, and ally community. We do 3 core things that we've outlined here, providing a community and along with a comprehensive set of professional development and support services for that beyond the CDO, as well as doing work and providing sort of events and social opportunities to raise awareness about some of the issues and topics that face the LGBTQ community. I can just like pause here and share anecdotally that OFB was probably the biggest driver in my Ross decision making. I think seeing this sort of microcosm of Ross values embodied within the OFB community. I don't want to get too deep into it too quickly, but let's just say was the one thing that I knew was going to, was the right decision for me. So we want to dive deper into some of the career-focused resources. Okay, take your time. There's a lot of sort of professional development and support that I've found specifically through OFB. So the way that we've set up our CDO, our career development office, is to have both the staff, coaches, and PD advisors, along with fact groups. A lot of you guys might know already that they're groups led by MBA2s, and you meet weekly, and they give you very much the most frank and honest sort of advice and help you along in a very structured way to prepare for making your career pivot into the industry of your choice, right? So for me in consulting, it was a very steep learning curve in terms of understanding what the interview process would look like, how to sort of persevere through what is a multi-month long process. And the sort of support that I got from CDO was unmatched. But on top of it, I got additional support through OFB. And so John, who's our VP of Alumni Relations and Corporate Relations, helped prepare the group who was going to go to RAMBA. So RAMBA, for folks who don't know, is Reaching Out MBA. It's a conference, it's a professional / recruiting conference that, I think there were like multiple thousands of MBA candidates. And I think this year it was underwritten by BCG as well as Deloitte or Discover. But amazing recruiting opportunity, and folks walk away with internship offers in hand. So I was lucky enough to have that opportunity, and I couldn't have done it without John, as well as dedicated support from CDO. There's a resume book specifically for Ross LGBTQ candidates that goes out to the sponsoring companies for RAMBA. And Christina Strong, who is one of the dedicated staff coaches, sat with us over multiple sessions to review our resumes, because it's a fairly early on sort of opportunity, and you might not feel like your resume is in perfect shape. Christina will help you get there, and all the MBA2s who are part of OFB were more than happy to take time with me, get coffee with me, and look over my resume and cover letters. So I think, in terms of the structured ways that OFB and CDO provide support, we can certainly talk more about those. There's also obviously informal community around sort of recruiting. So looking forward to diving in deeper.
Cool. So I am the vice president of events this year, and I was in charge of and also partially in charge of some of last year's events. So the first of which I'll talk about is Ross's National Coming Out Week, which is a week in October that loosely aligns with National Coming Out Day, and usually just before we all head to Ramba, which Krista just spoke about. At the heart of Coming Out Day is the idea that by sharing coming out stories, we can make an impact in each other's lives and bring forth compassion and support for the LGBTQ community. So this year, we hosted a queer film screening, various CEI panels and conversations with recruiters, a lunch and learn with 2 amazing local LGBTQ nonprofits, an allyship workshop with Spectrum Center, club-only celebrations and dinners, of course, got to keep it private, and of course, OutX, where we hosted over 250 plus classmates to listen to their classmates, a University of, I think there are 3 MBAs there, a University of Michigan dance performer, and a nationally recognized public official tell their coming out stories. In addition, we sold rainbow unicorn kits, over like 300 plus of them. They're amazing. So we could raise some money, and then everybody can literally wear rainbow outfits. As you can see, there's a few people wearing some of what we were selling there in the photos to show their pride during the show. And we opened the show with 2 LGBTQ celebrated music videos from Risky Business. So that was also amazing. We worked with Risky, created 2 amazing music videos that was just nuts, and rose almost $2,500 for nonprofits. So overall, it was an amazing experience. I think probably one of the biggest highlights of the year, especially during this year, given COVID really has made so much virtual, that this was the opening salvo to a new year for so many people. So it was a big deal, and still remains one of the most important weeks for our classmates to join us in love and in pride. Just that the team shirts alone for me when I was recruiting was a really big deal to see, and really sealed the deal for me coming to the school. I highly recommend going to ofbcomingoutweek.com to watch the music videos or listen to the student story or two, so you can get a really good glimpse, including Krista Sue tell her coming out story. But just watch those music videos and you'll get like literally some of the jitters of what it means to be in part of the Ross community. So Kate, why don't you take it away and talk about life in Ann Arbor?
Yeah. So we do have, OFB has some of the larger events, coming out week, MB Gay, which Dustin will talk about a little bit later. We have a lot of other stuff that goes on in Ann Arbor too. I think some is a little bit more organized. So what you're seeing here is actually the Out for Bus. So the bus is the Ross tailgate that goes along with football games. And so every year during Coming Out Week, we try to coordinate an Out for Bus where we really just take over. I think last year there was Jello shots and rainbow swag, and OFB got to do the playlist. I would say I think it was much better when OFB did the playlist. And we also do things like glitter bus in other type of years. So we get a party bus, drive into Detroit, load up with a bunch of OFB members and friends and allies, and drive into Detroit and hit up a bunch of queer bars. We also do some smaller scale stuff. So in the past, we've done happy hours, gingerbread making. This year we've been able to do a couple of socially distanced outdoor, very responsible happy hours, but also some virtual happy hours, trivia nights. Recently, the group has taken up doing some Among Us nights. And then Ann Arbor is just also a really fun time for a place for people to connect on a smaller scale. So whether it's just meeting up with folks kind of on a one-on-one basis to grab a coffee, grab brunch, those are really popular things to do. I know this fall some people went out and went apple picking or went and got some of the donuts from Dexter Mill. There's definitely a lot to do both in Ann Arbor, and I think as folks have discovered during COVID in the towns surrounding Ann Arbor, when we've all, I think, been encouraged to explore Michigan and the local community a little bit more, there's a lot of really fun stuff that goes on. Some formally planned by OFB, and some just kind of happens through our group me or through people texting each other. So that's been a lot of fun. And I will pass back to Dustin to talk about another one of our marquee events.
Yes. The infamous MB Gay. So it is hosted in Necto as part of a long list of Ross Affinity Club dance events hosted there. So there's, if there's anything that I think most of us are saddened about, it's not going to Necto, our nightclub here, and having the dance competitions by every affinity club that you can be part of. You can learn every type of dance form from around the world. And of course, MBA and drag is still part of that. So this event pulls about 10 teams of your fellow MBA classmates and partners, each to put together the most ridiculous ratchet drag dance-off competition you've ever witnessed. And we have a huge, like 8 tubs of the most disgusting, like very much used drag outfits in a friend's, like one of our MBA classmates' basements, right? So no, it's not just us hosting a few drag performers. You literally sign up with a team to do dress and drag and perform, and it's just a ton of fun. People gave $12,000 to nonprofits through this event last year, and the team with the most tips from their classmates wins. I forgot the name of the trophy, but it's a great trophy. This is the night that many classmates proclaim is one of the best nights of their lives during their MBA experience. And most say that they significantly and seriously regret it if they don't make it that night. And also it's hosted by yours truly, Out for Business. So on top of that, I would say we were really excited that with everything going on, that we've really tried to move this event to be as late in April as possible, or even May 1st, to really give us all the chance that maybe, to give us the chance that we will be able to host this in person. And also, yes, thank you, Kate. So prior to this event, we host a session with a professional drag performer and drag artist as well, who talks about the culture of drag, how important it was, the history of the LGBTQ, and continue to be important to the history of the LGBTQ people, and our importance of our movement, the importance to our movement. So we really make sure that if you're going to be part of a performance, you're not appropriating, right? You really do use it as a moment to pay respect to our history and learn a little bit about it. So with that, hopefully you'll have the chance to join us for that in person another day. We'll turn it over to my slide on support of the University of Michigan. So there is a range of support and community resources available at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, and Greater Detroit. And here are just to name a few. I'm going to do some personal shout outs for some of my own personal favorites. Spectrum Center is amazing. They do some of these really great, when COVID is gone and we have in-person experiences again, they do a lot of these really cool LGBT grad student happy hours, really pulling us all together. You get to know a bunch of people from across the graduate schools, which is just fantastic. One of my favorite events they host. But they also hosted, and we'll talk about later with us, our allyship training 101, which was just really, really superb. The University Health Service has a dedicated, and I've included here, a resource page for LGBTQ people. I think we all have extra special focus on our own health and some of the nuances that includes, and UHS has been nothing but amazing, at least personally for me, and helpful in that way. LGBT Detroit and Ozone House, we partnered with them this year, and LGBT Detroit is the first ever host of Black Pride and still hosts Black Pride every single year. So that is just such an amazing event and an amazing set of organizers who support our community of color here. And Ozone House, of course, supporting LGBTQ homeless youth, but it's just an amazing resource for us too. And we just have loved giving them tens of thousands of dollars over the last few years. All right, so, and now another amazing resource, Diana Economy. Tell us more, Kate. You may be on mute, yeah.
Yeah, I was definitely on mute. Thanks. Some of you may have had a chance to connect with Diana yet. If you haven't, I would definitely recommend it. So Diana is one of the directors in Ross Admissions, huge supporter of the OFB community. She may even be spotted at NECTO when we have events like MB Gay. You see Diana and some of her friends in the crowd supporting the club. And it goes so far beyond Diana. I think, Krista mentioned Christine Strong, who works specifically with us around prep for Ramba. Heather also within CDO came with us to Ramba last year to really be that support. But Diana Economy is that person in admissions that's definitely worth getting to know. So I would, do we have her email address on here? You know what we should do is we'll just pop her email address in the chat perhaps, because she is fantastic. She's also widely known around Ross for having the best maize and blue wardrobe. I'm not sure I've ever seen her in anything but maize and blue. So huge supporter of Ross, huge supporter of OFB, clutch person to get to know. Talk a little bit more about Ramba. I know Krista mentioned it earlier. It was virtual this year, so a little bit of a different feel. I think the hope is that next year they're back to being able to go in person. You know, I think whether it's virtual or in person, one of the things that's really nice is beyond the recruiting, which is real. It's very much a recruiting opportunity and phenomenal for it. Chaotic and stressful, but amazing. But also some of the OFB bonding that happens. It's a lot of fun. You know, it's kind of a shared experience for those of us who go. I think we spend some time together in OFB getting ready for it. We spend some time together hanging out. You can, you know, talk about how was your coffee chat? Mine was fantastic. Did you have a weird interaction with that person? Like it's a great community that happens around the Ramba conference. And then of course, when it is an in-person experience, there is that evening, nighttime bonding that happens with OFB, where people tend to gather and find ways to explore the city that the conference is located in. And it's a really fun way to just get out of Ann Arbor for a couple days and get to know each other in a different setting. So highly recommend looking at the Ramba conference. I would definitely encourage everyone to attend there. Related to the Ramba conference, there is a Ramba fellowship. So Ross does participate in the Ramba fellowship program. If you have not been on the Ramba site yet, I would recommend checking it out. They've got a lot of great resources for the queer business school community. It is targeted specifically at LGBTQ MBA students. So they've got some good info for pre-MBA. They've got info about the conference, and you can express your interest in school. I mean, some of you may have ended up on this webinar because you've already gone to the Ramba site, but I definitely recommend checking it out. And then the Ramba Fellow, we do have 2 fellows per year at Ross. So that is something that is selected through the application process. So 2 OFB members in the admitted class are selected as fellows each year. There is a bit of a scholarship attached to that as well. And so that is something, just as the admissions department gets to know you through the application process, they do make sure that they kind of note that people would potentially be candidates for that, you know, if they're to be admitted. So something to keep in mind there, another great just resource to have available. And then we will jump back to Dustin to chat a bit about our massive alumni network.
Yeah, and Kate, one quick question. Will the recording be sent out and they made available to attendees after this session?
Yes, that is my understanding, is that the recording is going to be made available to people after this session.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, I don't know how to use this thing. So just missing that one question. All right. So the Michigan network. I think for me, what differentiated Ross from other schools I got into and what excited me the most about not only engagement throughout my MBA, but also after, is the alumni network and support. So we have a deep, amazing bench of LGBTQ Ross alum all over and in many industries. And they are always just an email or phone call away and hoping to support LGBTQ MBAs and our attorneys. I've seen them play roles in recruiting and informational interviews, panel support. I, for one, and many of the people on this call I know all of y'all will be at Ramba. I, as an alumni, will be at Ramba, looking to keep an eye out for my Ross attendees, of course, and really trying to just get involved wherever they can. So, you know, the beautiful thing about having this, I think one of our board members just has been working on really building an amazing access point for re-engaging our alumni when you're ready. All right, so Kate, do you want to, I think we talked about living in Ann Arbor, but maybe we can do it again.
Yeah, I do want to just touch on, somebody asked whether this is alumni or just Ross alumni. I believe this is alumni, but one thing that is great to know is whether an alumni is from Ross or from the greater University of Michigan system. You throw that go blue on an email. I have yet to have anybody who doesn't respond like super quickly. People are very excited about being alums and helping one another out. Certainly within the MBA program, but across the entire university. So it's an awesome network to tap into worldwide. And then, yeah, I think, Krista, we have this somehow labeled for you. We talked about it a little bit already. If you have anything you feel like you want to add now, we certainly can. And then if people have further questions about this, we can circle back to it in a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I will chime in to supplement what we've talked about with life in Ann Arbor, but the outdoors activities and the nature here is beautiful. So if you're into hiking and or you have a dog or you just enjoy nature, there's a lot of beautiful trees. I don't know what they planted here, but it is like incredible in the fall. So it's a small town. I came from New York. I grew up there. I wasn't worried about the transition because Ann Arbor is honestly a foodie's dream. There's a ton of great coffee spots, a lot of great ethnic food, especially nearby Ipsy and Novi. So that's always super available. It does get a little dicey closer to like the 10 p.m., 11 p.m. time range when you want to get like late night food. There's a great 24-hour diner here, which you would have normally gone to anyway. But otherwise, we've been doing some really fun virtual events, cocktail making, and I think we had mentioned that we're going to organize virtual brunch, a lot of just fun things that we have organized to stay in touch with each other.
Sorry, I just keep muting myself. So we can jump on. So we have a couple of pre-populated questions that we'll just touch on, and I see some questions starting to come in the Q&A as well. So if anybody has a question that they've started to think of, feel free to pop into the Q&A and add it there. Even if you haven't thought of one, I do believe we have the opportunity to upvote questions, so feel free to check out what's going in there. In the interim, why don't we just touch briefly on a couple of these? So what is it like being LGBTQ plus at Ross? Dustin, Chris, I don't know if one of you wants to start off. We can certainly each add to that if we would like to. Or I can.
Yeah. Well. Okay. So.
Okay.
Yeah. This is an interesting question. I think I remember hearing this at the last webinar. I'm like, what an interesting way to pose this. But here's the deal. I have found that being at Ross, and this, I think there's a question, what surprised you most before and after enrolling in the school? And I think part of my response is the fact that I thought this was going to be an experience about focusing on what I'm most passionate about from a career standpoint, but I've actually found that this experience has allowed me to truly lean and reflect on who I am as a person and truly explore and understand my identity as a gay person, its history, and its relationships to others and their identities as well, and how that plays a role in the kind of future leader I want to be. So my focus and defocus on how diversity, equity, inclusion is at the core of who I am as a leader, and that must be, and I must learn that deeply and understand it widely so that I can apply it and change the organizations I'm going to. And how I want to support LGBT communities and business and the businesses that LGBTQ communities operate in the future. Additionally, while in Ann Arbor, OFB is my chosen family. And so I've had some amazing relationships built, lifelong, deeper in some ways than some of the friendships I've had before. I've also, by the way, to go on like life in Ann Arbor a little bit, have taken full advantage of Pride and Ecto nights, more so than, and probably questionably more so than everyone else in OB, often dancing late in the night in their red room and just getting some much needed like gay me time that I used to have in Minneapolis every single weekend. So that means something different for everyone else. And for me, that was going to the club and enjoying a big disco ball over my head. So you can really find what you want out of this community and bring a few folks with you if that's what you're looking to do.
Dustin, I loved what you said about some of the things that surprised you about leaning into your identities and all the different like ways it comes out and manifests both professionally and personally. If I might lean into that a little bit as well, I think maybe my personal journey has always to sort of think about what value and my work as the things that I can add to the table. And my identities and my personal story and my experiences were probably, like, to be honest, secondary additions, right? But I think through all of the just the culture at Ross, as well as some of the sort of programming, like I'm doing Leader X, which has been a really great way to sort of think about bringing our whole selves in every situation that we find ourselves in. And I think, you know, those sort of like formal pathways to help you grow holistically have been incredibly surprising and incredible for my own personal growth. The other path that I've found was a surprising way for me to grow is just admiring all the people around me. I think I see people like Dustin and Kate who are really great role models for me, living their identities and living their truths, and being amazing at what they do. So I see that with the Asian American Business Association. I see that we are able to engage in difficult conversations about being great allies and living intersectional identities and bringing all of that as an advantage when we go into the workforce. So that would be, for me, just a deeper sort of level to what it means to be gay here.
And Krista, just to extend off that, I'm looking at a question that was posed in the Q&A. You mentioned intersectionality, and I know that basically was a major focus theme of ours and has become a broader point of discussion on the board about how do we really resonate from that point of difference and moving forward as an OFB organization. Can you share a little bit about Out for Business and intersectionality, especially what you felt and or noticed about being part of OFB and a person of color? And I don't know if you can speak to your own personal experience and if broadening that out would make sense.
Yeah, for me, I think the statement of solidarity that was shared out over the summer was the earliest, but also the most like fervent affirmation that this was the right community for me. I think over the summer, Sean, who's our president, sent out a statement of our mission and the inclusion of intersectionality and allyship with our Black colleagues as one of the core pillars for how we as a club will operate. In that there is action that we're going to put behind our words, including making our set of speakers that we invite on campus to always include people who are not necessarily white, gay, and cis, right? And male. There are other things that we've done in terms of sort of like collaboration with our other affinity clubs to put on events so that we can engage in those kinds of discussions. I think we can tell at Ramba, and I'm talking a lot about Ramba because I'm lucky enough to be one of the folks organizing it this year. And I can already tell from our initial kickoff conversation that intersectionality is going to be a core focus for us. So I'm excited about all of the progress that I've seen already, even before I got on campus. And I know that we really put our actions and our money where our mouth is. We will be supporting a scholarship fund sourced from the clubs across Ross to support a student every single year. So I'm really proud of us for having done those actions behind the statements.
I might do a little bit of a change of pace real quick, and then we can actually circle back because I've seen a couple of great questions come up in the Q&A, but I do want to hit one of these other, this is just because this is a common question that we tend to get. So I do want to make sure we hit on this. We hear especially from applicants applying to business schools from the coast. I think this is a concern. I will share that, as somebody applying from Boston, this was certainly a concern of mine, was looking at, what's that going to be like trying to go back to Boston afterwards. So I'll maybe lead off on this one. I think Krista and Dustin, if you guys are both looking at Chicago, that, but it's, for those who do have concern about, what it means to be at a business school in Michigan, especially if you want to get out to California or you want to get to the East Coast, kind of flipping back to that slide about the network. The network is huge. So are there as many Ross alums in Boston as there are in Chicago? Not of those recent alums. That said, there is a great network of alums in cities all over the world. So we do have a lot of companies that come to Ross and they will recruit on our campus. They reach out to us directly. I think they love Ross students. We love them. So they know that we have a population of students that they want to be connected to. So a lot of companies are really active here, and a lot of them will actually do specific events for our OFB members as well, and connecting with some of the companies' affinity groups. But we do have a pretty large set of folks going to, the typical Boston, New York, DC, San Fran, Seattle, super popular. And from my personal experience, I would say, as somebody recruiting to go back to the East Coast, there were times that maybe I had to take the extra step to get connected to somebody in that specific office. But Ross folks and folks at companies were really excited to help me make those connections. So I don't feel that I had any difficulty getting connected with the people that I ultimately needed to be able to find that job in Boston. Dustin and Chris, I'm not sure if you guys want to chime in here, if you have, you guys are.
Well, I was going to say, it's interesting just because I'm a returning to Deloitte, and I had choices to just chose to go to Chicago. But there is, and I apologize, I don't have the stats memorized. But I believe outside of Chicago, where most people go outside Chicago, so it's like a large number, and then second, third is I think it's like San Francisco, New York. So as outside of, I think Chicago, I personally call Chicago next year like MBA year 3 for me personally, because I think I'm just gonna learn, get paid for it finally, and I'm gonna be basically hanging out with my MBAs every week and on the weekends, Krista. So it should be good.
Yeah. And one thing I'll circle back to, I think I saw somebody put in a question, it's a little bit related, is kind of the flip of, if you are somebody who's coming from outside the region to school at Ross, do you have any difficulty kind of coming into the community, finding those relationships, getting connected to the various resources that you're looking to connect with? Krista and Dustin, we're all coming from outside Ann Arbor, so you guys may have thoughts on this too. I think that is one of the beauties of Ross, is that we are all, for the most part, all coming from outside of Ann Arbor and the Detroit area. So it's something, I think there's a lot of community that gets built here just because it is that small town feel, and everybody is really here to invest in that 2-year relationship. Most people don't have that local network. So when classes end, they're looking to each other to build those relationships instead of maybe going back to other friend groups that they have in the area. So between that, and I think also the school is really great about making public the resources that are available. And it is just kind of on you to seek out and kind of follow up on the ones that are most of interest to you.
Yeah, I'm just going to double tap a little bit on what you just said there right at the end too, is, an MBA experience has so much to do. It's important that you go in knowing what you need for your own wellness and state of mind, right? And I need personally, by the time I left Minneapolis, I was surrounded by LGBTQ people in a queer community pretty much everywhere. And that was really important that I tapped into that. So OFB and finding my family here is important. finding my local nightclub, right? Getting to know some folks across grad schools. Like I just kind of came up with my list of things that I knew what kind of resources I need to tap into in order to make sure I felt comfortable and I could lean into being and feeling my most self. Krista, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think just building on your point of knowing and having clarity of thought around what is important to you. I think OFB morphs and adjusts based on whatever their members choose to bring to it. But there's a sort of like common sort of foundation, and it's sort of unspoken too, that we're here for each other and that we're here to have fun too. And I think I have found such solace from being part of a small community within a bigger community, where it's a microcosm of all the things that I love already. I have a group chat going with a couple of folks who are doing the consulting recruiting circuit with me, and it is incredibly helpful to just be able to vent, right? I'm also part of like the women's group here, so part of like Michigan Business Women, and there's also a subgroup for the women going into consulting, and it's just not the same. I think there's something so special about being able to relate, and also having things that you can just sort of know are givens, and you have much more nuanced conversations and support that way. The other thing that I'm interested in, and it's not necessarily LGBTQ related, is sustainability. And is massive. So there are so many resources that reach across different schools for you to learn about sustainability, and both in your personal life as well as how we can affect change in a professional setting. And they have all these great events that they've organized. They've brought amazing speakers on, both within the sort of faculty as well as outside speakers. So that's something that is beyond community support and career development, is extremely available to you.
Yeah, and then if I might just add to, I think as resources, thank you, Krista, your group meets our community are so important in that way, is mental health too. And so I know part of COVID, I sought a therapist as well. It just got too overwhelming. And I found that my access to resources for mental health support, especially given everything that's going on, and the MBA experience can be so intense, it is very common to get access, and those resources are so widely available to MBAs to help us get through some really tough moments, because it can just get too intense. So that's too intense. I mean, all MBA experiences can be a lot. There's a lot of growing that happens. So.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I'm going to dive into a couple of the questions in our Q&A here. One, this may be on the minds of a few people, I think, is, so during the admission, recruiting, interview process, how do you bring up your LGBTQ plus identity, either in the conversations or in those applications? And do we think it's important to discuss with potential employers?
Yeah, I mean, Chris, I would love to hear kind of your opinion here too. I guess as the Ross Coming Out Week and OutX director, I think the most important thing to remember that your coming out story and your sexuality is all in your own timeline, and it's all up to you about how you want to share it and tell it. It is in no way obligated to anyone or your clients, and it's none of their business unless you want it and you think it's important that they know, and you can share it in your own way. There are so many ways of doing so. In the stories you tell, a lot of companies are just asking about intersectionality and identity and how that's important to you and how you want to drive inclusion, and talking about being LGBTQ might be important there. Including on your resume as part of a club or an affiliation might be a nice light way to talk about it. Asking me the things I enjoy doing at the end, blah, blah, blah. I mean, there's so many ways you can, but also you don't need to. But with that said, I want to make sure that I have not found a single problem in engaging any company on this topic. And I think there's another question, and I'll leave it to Kate to kind of pull in about consulting. I can talk a bit more about that, given my background as such.
Let's go for it now. I think it's related in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So I guess my internship in consulting kind of, but I mean, I was 7 years at Deloitte, and I actually went through the coming out process while I was at the firm. and had to figure out what that meant for clients. And I was particularly nervous about, I think, as some people usually are, and have had conversations with a number of analysts about their own coming out stories, about engaging clients and about bringing their full selves to work, especially as an LGBTQ person, how that comes to look like. So with one caveat, of course, what I just said, it's all on your own journey. It's all your own story, and you can be as private or as open with people in your companies as you choose to. It's none of their business. With that said, I think I had to realize that in order to be a very confident consultant, I had to come out because I felt like I had to bring everything I could. I didn't want to be scared of who I was. And the moment I came out and the moment I started talking to my firm and my closest firm and my teams about it, I was blown away, frankly. I was at a firm that celebrates in your independence and celebrates your identities and how special and different and unique you are. And frankly, they give a lot of money to affinity organizations. Then they send us to conferences. I mean, fully bankrolling Ramba and out in equal conference attendance, right? And something about being part of an affinity club in your corporation really became a very special part of just the joy of realizing that you could work at a company and you can enjoy just hanging around queer people and having them have them pay for drinks at one of your local LGBTQ bars. You know, it's all part of the fun, and you realize it becomes part of who you are, and hopefully being celebrated for it. Luckily, I never had a client where it was an issue. Actually, more of my clients became a lot more LGBTQ friendly as I was there. I did hear of some where it was an issue. However, at least for the firm I was working for, whenever an issue like that was brought up between a client and a person, our leadership at our firm would very much stand up and say this was inappropriate and incorrect engagement with. We are here doing work with you. That was inappropriate, and would handle it, and they would defend the employee.
Yeah, I would just, I would say one thing I learned through the recruiting process last year, you know, having come from a career in education, so I was a little bit new to the consulting world and the business world, because really this is something to consider whether you're in consulting or any number of other fields, is that no matter what company you're at, there will be resources available to you to kind of help you and be your ally and back you up on this. So I think it's also something that's totally fair to ask about in the recruiting process, if that's important to you, and especially if you are able to connect with folks within the LGBTQ community, and just ask about the ways in which they do or don't feel supported at any particular firm. Because I think it's good to just get a sense of that as you're getting to know the various companies that you might be interested in working for. There's going to be different flavors of it at every company. So let's see. This is kind of a fun one that seems to be popping up at the top right now. And Dustin, you touched on it a little bit before maybe, but what surprised you the most before and after enrolling at Ross? Does anybody want to? I'll kick it off. I would probably have to think a little bit about what surprised me the most before, but in terms of what surprised me the most after enrolling it at Ross is, I think I really underestimated the value that was brought by the greater community, and especially a lot of the academic resources. You know, I've been so focused on looking at just the business school in particular. So when I started having classmates from other grad programs in class with me, or a lot of folks at Ross who are dual degrees, and just pulling in a lot of different interests, a lot of different sets of knowledge, the ability to take classes outside of Ross, you know, knowing that U of M has just really impressive, highly ranked programs kind of across the board. I think that has been an enhancement to my education in a way that I had not necessarily anticipated, but it's been fantastic. Like next semester, I'm taking a class at the law school that I'm really stoked about, that's going to talk or look at the mobility and transportation and access in the Detroit area, working with the law school and the School of Urban Planning. So there's a lot of those types of opportunities and programs that bring together students from different parts of the university that I think are super cool. So that has been the biggest surprise to me since enrolling. Didn't anticipate it, but like would not be able to imagine my experience without it at this point.
Oh, go ahead, Krista.
No worries. I think this is, I guess it shouldn't have been surprising to me, but the generosity of the Ross Alumni Network has been like the thing that most surprised me, but probably shouldn't have been. And the reason why I say that is I would expect alumni to want to pull more Ross folks into their companies. And by and large, that has been absolutely true, right? They want you to be part of their networks. They work for great companies and they know that Ross folks are great. So why wouldn't they want more, right, at their own companies? But I've been surprised as I've been facing sort of, different decisions about where I should take my career path between just like different industries and how I want to apply myself. I've gotten so much time and just like advice about how I should think about different career choices, related or unrelated to their own jobs and their own companies. They truly are here to mentor you, and they want you to be successful and happy with whatever decision you make. So I think having that sort of unattached and unbiased advice, I mean, they're giving you their honest perspective on a huge life decision. I think that has been truly invaluable.
Yeah, I did answer a little bit before. I mean, I think I talked about like besides like walking down in Necto when like Derek Barry or like Latrice Royale, like these major drag queens are there performing. Those nights are just, everybody comes in from Detroit and around, it's packed. And then I get to the Red Room. I've never been in there before, and it's a full-on like crazy dance floor. I'm like, oh my God, I actually can be here. This is like I need this every week. I was generally just really appreciative of the fact that I think I was attracted to the school for some reason, and I was excited about the culture, and I think it was very genuine. And I was thinking, okay, would this actually turn out to be the case when I actually started meeting other students? And it is through and through, right? That very genuine connection that you feel. My section was full of comedians and funny people, and also made a very, very open and not very competitive, but highly collaborative learning environment where we're all in this together. And it really helped to enable my learning style, but also build some really close friendships. And so what you feel is what you got. And I was really appreciative of that. And I think was able to find really close friendships really quickly because of it.
Thanks. So I think we have time for one last question. So let's end on this one because I love talking about all the highlights of life at Ross and OFB. So what has been the highlight for each of you during your involvement with OFB?
I'll kick us off. I think it was the entire OutX experience. One, because being a speaker and having the honor of being a speaker and making such an impact, and I've gotten such great and kind messages after sharing my story, was just a sort of step in accelerating my own personal growth journey. It's the most out I've ever been. There's a video of it. There were, hundreds of people on it. And to be able to be proud of myself for that and to have the opportunity to grow in that way was, I'm just so grateful for it. The second was working with Dustin, who made it just the best experience that it could have been for me. I think the sort of like rigor and dedication and passion he felt for organizing the best event and to make sure that for the speakers as well, it was a valuable experience. Justin, I'm so grateful to you. I'm so glad to know you, and thank you so much.
Oh my God, thank Krista. I loved working with you as well. On the OutX point, one of my favorite things was not only working with all the speakers, but in addition to that, I had the chance to raise money to pay for the speaker fee for Andrea Jenkins, who is the first trans Black woman elected to public office. And I got to work with her again after working with her in TEDx Minneapolis and listen to her read poetry that she read 10 days after the George Floyd protests began in Minneapolis was extremely powerful. And it was amazing after that, after Audex, going to the courtyard and just hearing about people saying to me for the first time that it's been a long time since they felt so seen, especially when we listened to Krista Sue's talk and feeling as as a woman of color that, and a queer woman of color, that they felt that the story had really gave them some answers and ideas about how to engage their families. So that was really, really powerful. Outside of that, I think being in like high heels in the makeup room of MB Gay in the basement, while everybody, like, just watching makeup artists work on all your fellow MBA, like turning all into drag queens, and just the chaos and like screaming at people not to steal each other's shoes. It was so stupid and it was so much fun and amazing. So it's just crazy. It's crazy. But yet we walk away with just such extraordinary experiences with other people. So
I would say for me, I tend to be somebody who gravitates more towards small scale events. So I've really enjoyed a lot of the less formal stuff that kind of pops up through the OFB GroupMe is sort of just as people are available. And I know last year a popular thing was we did just a couple casual like L word watch parties, or some people might get together at one person's apartment before going out to Necto. So I tended to show up for the pre-party and then I would sort of go a different direction when folks went to the club. But I love a lot of those smaller group, more intimate things that sort of pop up through OFB, and we have a pretty active GroupMe. And aside from that, I would say Ramba last year when we were down in Atlanta was, it was crazy, it was packed, it was a great time and a great way to get to know some of my fellow OFBers. So with that said, I know we're just a couple minutes over, so hopefully we're not making anybody late to anything, but I do want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you so much to Dustin and to Krista, who have taken the time to come and share their experiences, at the start of this exam week. I know you guys have a lot going on, so thank you very much. We have our email addresses up here, so feel free to reach out to any of us. We also put Diana Economy's email address in the chat a bit ago, so feel free to connect with her as well. Check out the Ramba website and keep an eye out. I do believe we are going to be making this webinar available online. So thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your night.
Everybody, best of luck.